Right. Welcome back to Coexist. My name is Co Lewis. I'm the host and founder of this podcast that was created in order to support other great organizations in the world. A quick backstory: I was raised in Ethiopia on a game reserve as a kid, and the work and everything that I saw as a child on a game reserve made me have a deep love and commitment to protecting animals. And so I carry forward, 35 years in radio in San Diego. And now I'm running a foundation and I'm hosting this podcast because we don't have a lot of time in the world to fix things and stop extinction. So having special guests on like I do today, which I'm really excited about. We are really working hard to spread awareness, make people aware what's going on, and the great people out there doing it. And the man who's smoking his pipe right now, his name is Craig Spencer, and he is the co-founder of the Black Mamba's Anti-Poaching Unit. And I'm so glad you took the time out of your crazy schedule, Craig, to spend some time with us, share your story, share what the Black Mambas are doing, and I'm thrilled. So thanks for making time.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for the invite as well, the invitation.
Absolutely. And I want to, and before I forget, I want to thank the man who connected us, a guy who's on our board and an advisor, Dr. Thomas Snitch. He's like, I think I can get Craig from the Black Mambas on. I'm like, what? That's fantastic. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited. So, Craig, tell us right now, obviously it's early evening where you are. Where are you? And tell us about the organization. I'm gonna ask you different things, but set up, are you from South Africa? Where are you right now? And what's going on in your life at this moment?
Fantastic. Thanks very much again. And hi, Tom, if you're out there. Yeah, thanks very much for the invite. Tom has spent some time with us in the bush. He's met the Mambas. He's been quite a big role player in Sub-Saharan Africa in particular.
Yeah.
I'm sitting, this is our operations center. So this is the Black Mamba said, I'm not going to swivel the computer too much around, but we have electricity here and we have Wi-Fi, which is why I find myself sitting here today. This is on the western boundary in the northern part of the Greater Kruger National Park, which sits in South Africa. Our neighboring border is Mozambique, and then in the north we have Zimbabwe and Botswana, and down south Swaziland. So it's a 3 million hectare landscape, and we are responsible for this little corner right up against the western boundary fence where we have that interaction with the local communities.
So you are game warden of the, is it Balule? Is that the name of the area that you are game warden in?
That is correct. I'm the warden of the Olifants West region. So it's divided. It works on the federal system, a bit like the United States political model. So I am the game warden of the Olifants West region.
And how long? Well, let me go back to early, Craig, so I can find out where and how you got to where you are today, because the accomplishments that you've made in Africa, which has limited resources, limited outreach. It's an amazing, powerful story how two people can come up with an idea and create a world-renowned organization. So when did you connect with animals? When did your passion for protecting them start? And how did you become a game warden, first of all?
Yeah, thanks. So it's interesting. My family, my family started in Botswana. They overseas again. I stayed behind in South Africa. But I think it's innate. You're kind of born with that desire to help animals. Or there's some kind of a connection, and maybe it's an introverted personality trait or something like that. But it's definitely been since my earliest memories, even mowing the lawn with the lawnmower in the beginning. You spend half of your life taking the little bugs out of the way so you don't go over them with the lawnmower. And you had limited shower time when I was a kid growing up in Botswana as well, because you turn the tap on, and then all the bugs wash away. So I spent half of my shower time rescuing the bugs so they didn't get washed away. So I think it's kind of innate. It's something that you're born with. And then I did 11 years working for local government in South Africa in an anti-poaching unit as well, but that was way down south, about 2,200 kilometers south of where I'm sitting now. And that was primarily in the marine environment with the offshore islands. So I got the sort of salt water out of my system pretty fast 11 years later, and I was ready to head back for the savannas. So it's just that desire to get involved and to do something and feel some tangible return for your investment of time and everything else. So we keep pursuing this. Like, what can we do next? How do I fix the ozone hole? I don't know. It's a mission. Impossible.
So you saw areas that needed help. You thought you had the wherewithal to be able to do it, or at least the passion and the commitment to be able to do stuff like this. So at what age were you starting to do all this work with the government and, becoming involved with game parks? Like, what age are you? What timeline are we?
Okay, so in the days when I started in South Africa, there was a national conscription, so everybody was conscripted into the Defence Force, and I was called up to the Air Force, and then I sustained some nerve damage to my neck over here, which, by the way, was a black widow spider that bit me, and then they cut the lymph gland out, and in the process they severed the thoracic nerve and a few others. So I was medically deferred and ended up at university, studied a degree in conservation management or wildlife management, and then pursued it further and further and further, ended up with botany and anthropology behind me. But that was probably only because I didn't know what else to do with myself. I didn't know how to get directly involved. And we could say that the black widow spider probably saved me from a lifetime pursuit of being in the military. So yeah, here I sit trying to perpetuate that lifestyle and at the same time exercise that insatiable need to fix things that are broken with the environment.
It's funny you say that as a kid, that you kind of feel like it's an innate part of your being, saving animals and being part of the solution and having a heart for them and their health and their well-being and the future for them. Something that I found very young, like you did, being on a game reserve in Awash, Ethiopia. I just had this, it was like in me. It wasn't like something that kind of fell across my life like, oh, hey, I like animals.
Yeah.
Nope, it was something really early on. And any way that I could work and better their situation, or raise awareness, I was doing it. Fortunate thing is that life changed your course with your black widow spider bite and put you where God wanted you and needed you. And this was on the ground, fighting, like up front where the crisis is. And here you are today. And so you are a game warden. You're seeing over the decades the change in poaching, trophy hunting, wildlife trafficking. You're just seeing this all unfold. So what were you thinking at the time when you started to see it escalate, where it was getting out of control and corruption was really, getting in all the parks and in all the departments? When did you say, okay, there is something I can do here more than just being a game warden? I can take it a step further. I'm going to create this alternate unit, and here's why. And what we're talking about are the world famous Black Mamba anti-poaching unit. This is the first all-women anti-poaching unit in the world, and it's groundbreaking. So this is 2013 that you started this, correct?
That is correct, yeah. So, it's exactly as you say. I actually came up here to this part of Balule to pursue my academic career. I had no intention of getting back into a paramilitary or militarized anti-poaching unit. But then in 2012, the rhinos started dropping. The poachers were coming in from both borders, and we were losing rhinos hand over fist. The guys on the ground couldn't keep up with the autopsies or getting to the crime scenes in time. So they approached me and said, you've got a skill set. Would you like to engage? And I said, no. Not anymore. Thank you very much. I am now sitting at waterholes and counting elephants and measuring trees for a living. Thank you very much. But you can't sit back. It's in your personality. Once you're in, it's in for a penny, in a pound, as they would say. So I said, fine. we would assist again. And I took on the position as head warden for that those few years, and started because you know what's happened in the past is poaching is not new, as you know, to the African landscape or actually anywhere in the world. And there's socio-political reasons, socio-economic reasons, and what have you. And we've never really addressed those. We've only ever dusted off our rusty old guns and put on our old army uniforms and rushed out there and addressed it with the same old rusty tools time and time again. And then it comes back to bite us. And every time it comes back twice as strong. So we thought, wow, this is, it would be very silly to try and win the battle, but in the long term, lose the war. So we decided that if we targeted these young women in the communities, they're the primary caregivers in those communities. If you ever go and visit somebody in a local village here, they're looking after everything from little baby goats to little chickens in a box under a lamp, and the elderly and the sick and the other kids everybody's there because the women have that role. It's their primary responsibility. And then also, if you invest in the young woman, it's a multi-generational investment. So, you're getting that young woman now, and then she's going to have kids. Eventually, she's going to retire and be sitting at home, looking after the children in the community so that their mothers can work, and so on. So I'm getting 3 generations for the price of 1. And there's a ethos amongst the women, an ethos of caring and nurturing. And they're self-motivated. They have to get up earlier than anyone else. Can I tell you a funny story about the interview? So the selection process. I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but I'm scared I'll forget. We sit with the tribal chiefs and we say, this is what we would like to do. And they buy into the model. And I say to them, could you please help me to select these young ladies? So we sit now in their little tribal village, and a whole bunch, hundreds of young women that need work arrive. And they say, we don't do the job because it's too strenuous. You have to walk very far. It's a lot of PT, and the training is paramilitary, etc. And then I ask them, okay, so where do you get your firewood? No, we go into the bush and we harvest firewood and we carry it back on our heads. Where do you get your water? Now I have to walk down to the local river to fetch my water in 20-liter water cans, 1 on the head, 1 in each hand, baby on the back, etc. So, okay, and then how do you get your kids to school? Now I walk them to school, cross the rivers, dodging the crocodiles, etc., etc. I say, fine. You've been selected. You're already doing the job.
You're
if
in.
You think you can't,
You had the 1-liter gallon on your head. The water on your head. You had me right there. I love that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, so they underestimate their own ability, to be able to carry heavy weights, to walk far, endure the African sun, to dodge the wild animals and whatever. They really underestimate themselves.
Yeah, and they've committed. And if you don't mind, I'm going to interject parallels with my foundation, because we're modeling ourselves after you and anybody who's great. So we started UNICEF for Wildlife 5 years ago. And one of the first things, I have a female co-founder. At the very beginning, we said we are going to have women involved in all aspects of this foundation, including being on the ranger team. And people are like, what? And we're like, absolutely, because of everything you said. Women are so strong in Africa because they're multitasking. They don't complain. They just do it. Like you said, they're walking 20 kilometers and they're not griping because it's just what they have to do to get the job done. So it's in them to nurture and to care and to do it right. So having women and targeting the women is a brilliant move. And every organization around the world should look at it the same way. They should look at women as being very vital components of this puzzle to tackle poaching and conservation, or anything in the world.
Anything, absolutely. It's the biggest untapped resource, I believe, in Africa and Asia and what have you, is the young women. Because, there's also an ethos of conflict avoidance. I think, throughout the eons with the patriarchal society that they've lived in and been brought up in, they've developed the skills. Okay, there's some wild animal chasing around at the back there. Let me just put my back on. They have, it's a bit nerve-wracking out there when the sun goes down. They've had to develop conflict avoidance skills in the household and in their own communities and what have you. So, that places them in a perfect position for anything political, or in law enforcement, or in any role, even in the classroom. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And so let's go to 2012, when you're probably thinking about it, to 2013, when you actually created the Black Mamba unit. So what was the catalyst where you're working in the field and you're seeing this, like you said, rhino poaching is out of control because the crime syndicates are getting more sophisticated and know how to work the system. The bribery starts coming in, the corruption starts creeping in, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by the bad guys all over the place. So you're thinking, I got to step my game up. We got to use another tool. So you have a partner, Amy Clark, and Transfrontier is that the company you work for, or is that what company is that in relationship to the Black Mambas?
So we started Transfrontier Africa as an NPO, nonprofit organization, to be able to run these programs, these environmental education programs, and the Black Mambas, and also a lot of the research and so on. So it's a tool where we can employ specialists in the field. So the government microstructure, or the park's microstructure can't really accommodate that kind of thing, and budget-wise and so on. So we had to develop a different entity altogether. So that's how Transfrontier Africa started.
Gotcha. So you started the Black Mamba unit with, so you said had hundreds of women show up for the interview process. What made you hire the first 6? What was the kicker where those 6 were on top of the other candidates for the same position?
Man, if I had to be honest, I would say everybody that arrived for the interview had the potential. And we didn't know anybody, and we just had to go through a bit of a selection process with the physical work. So there was a lot of part of the interview process is how far can you run and how many push-ups can you do, and that sort of thing. And also I wanted people that could speak well, because they're in the public interface. We have quite a bit of international tourism coming through the park, so need to be able to articulate themselves well, stand up in front of a magistrate and give good evidence in court. So confidence, personality, articulate, and reading and writing skills are also quite important, because the training is both a little bit academic and then a lot of physical. So we had to try and get that balance. But if I had to be honest, I think everybody is capable. It's heartbreaking when in the beginning, we started with a small team of 6, because I had to demonstrate that I was onto something. Everybody was thought I was out of my mind, to take young women and put them in uniforms.
That I've been questioned, like, what are you doing multiple times, and you just have to push forward. You just have to keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally get it. So the 6 women obviously made an impact immediately in a social way, in a work way, in a conservation way, and now you've got what, 36 members now?
That's right. Yeah, 36. I think there's an elephant eating on the tree over here.
Oh, okay.
There's 36 Mambas. We've had 3 intakes in total.
I wish I had an elephant eating the tree over here. I love this so much. I can't even stand it. I love it. Sorry. So go ahead. So you have 36.
I bet you they're going to pull out our water pipes, by the way. So you guys can be glad that I had my shower before the podcast. My weekly shower. So we've had 3 intakes, and we select from the communities that are directly adjacent to the park. So, those are my target communities, because they're the ones that are influenced the most, or are influencing the park the most, need the help the most. So, but now, in the meantime, we've taken 7 of those out of the field, of the patrol regime, and placed them into classrooms. So we have 10 primary schools. And there's 8 in total, 1 senior educator, and then 7 assistants that assist her at the schools, because that's a big part of our program now. We realized, we can't chase the poachers off the landscape and then ignore the fact that their kids are sitting hungry at school or whatever. So it's a multi-pronged strategy.
I love that. And that's how we patterned ourselves. So I love everything you're saying, because it makes me feel like, okay, we're on the right path too. So let me ask you, so in 2013, Can you come up with a number of how many rhinos are left in South Africa at that time, and what are the numbers now? Has it improved? Is it getting worse? Like, where are we from 2013 to 2020?
So that's a fascinating question. If I had the answer to that question, I promise you I would tell you, but it's actually impossible for us to figure out how many rhinos are left on this landscape. And there's a lot of debate in the scientific community about it, but we speculate. We do our annual census, but to fly 3 million hectares, it takes months, and animals rearrange themselves on the landscapes, and, the accuracy, blah, blah, blah. So I can tell you that the black rhinos are by far the most endangered. And we're probably sitting with between 5,000 and 6,000 of those left. And with the white rhinos, we assume that we are sitting with maybe 22,000. So that numbers-wise, they're much stronger, but we also lose a lot more of them to the poachers. They're losing hands down, Because I think the black rhinos are much more difficult to locate as well because of their habitat preference. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's to say, we've lost approximately 1,200 rhinos a year to poachers since 2012. So if you do the math, we're probably down to half of what we started with.
Staggering. It's staggering. When you think of the scope, when I lived in Ethiopia at the time, there were 10 million elephants, and there were plenty of rhino. They were everywhere. And to watch the decline and the numbers, and to know that the crime syndicates and the poachers, it's a far more sophisticated thing. And let me split that up for you. By the way, I'm speaking with Craig Spencer, the co-founder of the Black Mamba's organization and Transfrontier. You've got to split the conservation up in kind of two groups. There's all the animals of Africa, and you have to separate the rhinos, because the rhinos is really military style operations where you're trying to protect them. This is a completely different skill set working with them. They're geotagging on their phone, then they're finding the rhino in the field because somebody took a photo. I mean, it's so sophisticated because the rhino horn is so valuable in the black market. So do you think in the past few years, are we getting on top of it a little bit? Are we slowing them down a little bit? Is it still a free fall? Is it improving at all with everything that we know about the illegal trade and poaching?
Absolutely. It's a very good question as well, because it's something that we have to ask ourselves. Are you just throwing money into a big hole in the ground every day when you drive past, or should we maybe be looking at different interventions, maybe sanctuaries, where we breed up numbers like a Swiss bank account for these things? But the reality is that the animals need to interact with their environment. They're key role players in their environment just as much as elephants are landscape architects. And interestingly, we had probably more rhinos, white rhinos, on this landscape than we did elephants in the beginning. But the tides have turned now, so the elephants outnumber the rhinos now, which is quite a good indicator of how the impact of the poaching. But yes, we've seen since 2017, about December 2017, we've seen a downward trend in both poaching efforts and the number of rhinos. So the success of the poacher has been reduced tremendously by, substantial amounts in certain areas. Some areas are getting hit harder than others. But, I don't want to, it's so hard to say, we're winning now, because I want to touch wood every time I say that. But, we're having a good run. And, this lockdown, COVID-19 lockdown has really helped us tremendously, because the borders are closed. And this is an international supply and demand chain, to the east. And everybody says to me, but what about the black market? How are you going to control the black market? I say, guys, it's not actually a black market. This is a yellow market that we're dealing with. As politically incorrect as that might sound, let's call a spade a spade. Right? The consumer nations that are forcing or coercing these African people, these starving African people, to go in and do this dirty work and subject themselves to rangers, bullets, lions, elephants, or what have you, and run the risks of coming home in body bags. That is because of the consumer nation's insatiable appetite. All right. So I had to get that off my chest.
Good.
I think that You know, this is not an African problem. The Africans don't utilize rhino products for anything. It's all supply and demand overseas in China and Vietnam in particular. So you know, we can deal with the black mambas and what have you. We can do the level 1 poacher, the guy that's sneaking in at nighttime with a high-powered rifle and a homemade silencer on the front and so on. But that's the level 1 guy. That's not where we're supposed to be targeting. So I always say to my guys, we're just keeping our fingers in the dikes. You know, and I mean that in the Dutch sense, not in the, you know, so there's it's a little ambiguous when you say something like that in this town. But
Tom warned me about your sense of humor, and I'm freaking loving it. So you just be Craig Spencer. I freaking love you. I love it.
Hopefully you can edit this at the end of the day. See, you know, we need international intervention, and that's going to have to come in the form of political pressure, okay, and international law enforcement agents like U.S. Fisheries and Wildlife are like superbly influential with this sort of thing. You know, they have agents down here, and they have agents in the East as well, and we interact with them quite a lot. There's a number of, you know, this. I had to have a good laugh. There were NGOs that were putting up these banners at the airports with pictures of rhinos' faces that have been hacked off and the little baby rhino nuzzling up against the mother. And they said, no, we're going to place these at the airports in China and Vietnam as a shock factor. I said, guys, that looks like a menu. Okay, they're going to ask, where's the new restaurant that's opened? That there's a totally different, you know, as facetious as that might sound, there's a totally different set of values attached to the life of animals and what have you in the East that there is here. You know, so we can't use those kind of shock tactics. That's not going to work. But it's destabilizing families in Africa. It's militarizing national parks in Africa, and it's causing massive instability on the landscape. Can you imagine? We have armed poachers coming in that are syndicated onto this land. Their skill set is how to sneak in and out, avoid the law enforcement officials, and use a gun to get what they want. So our response is that we train up a unit, and we militarize our field ranger corps to try and deal with that. So we're giving them the same skill set, basically. We're then sending them home to the same community. You know, are we not creating a landscape of instability at the end of the day when we've got field rangers with the only skill set is guns and bombs and whatever, and we've got a poacher community that's same skill set and dodging the guys with the guns and bombs. And eventually, anyway, it's just not a resilient national park if you have to defend it with guns and bombs, and then you're sending those same people back home and they're tucking their children into bed at night, and they think their daddy is a hero because he carries a gun and so on. We want a totally different ethos. We want a mother tucking her child into bed at night and telling them wonderful stories about the elephants drinking at the water holes and the hyenas calling at night, and the Mowgli ethos, if you like, you know.
And that's true. And again, so people understand that you have outsiders coming into Africa preying on poverty. How low can you go when you are preying on somebody who's just trying to survive and you're flashing some passion from them? I mean, you are about as low as snake spit at that point. Snake spit's actually this is what we're dealing with, and you're right, it's a mindset. I'm hoping the new generation coming up through Asia is getting a little bit more informed about what's really going on, because the older classes, they don't care, honestly. Let's just be honest, they just don't care. They look at it as a commodity, food items, status. It's a different world. Hopefully the new generation coming up. So in the one thing at first, I didn't realize that the black mambas were not armed. They are there as a support team for rangers doing a very critical job. They're patrolling, they're checking fences, they're clearing snares, and you guys have done a magnificent job in snare clearing, because we've seen a lot of snaring escalate in our area. So having that presence in the field is a deterrent, and people know that your girls don't mess around. They take their job very seriously. They have a lot of pride in their job, and they mean business. This is not a fluff job. This is a real job, and they are very much role models in the community, especially for women. So that whole APU unit serves in so many ways. It serves a real purpose and manifests itself in real success of dropping poaching and catching the bad people, but also inspiring young women that there's another life and they can do more in life and achieve more in life.
Yeah, no, that is exactly the Mamba thing in a nutshell. So the unarmed, we get quite a lot of criticism. It's interesting how everybody used to ask me in the past, how did you manage to convince the local chiefs and the tribal communities to allow you to employ women into a typically man or male dominated role? So that was easy, man. That was the easiest thing in the world. These guys are so desperate for jobs out here and to put food on the table. The difficult part was to convince the old school field rangers and the old school managers, the people sitting in my position, primarily white guys, they were the tough nuts to crack, that we had to convince that these women were actually going to fulfill a valuable role. So we still battle with that, actually. And when I told them I'm not going to arm them, everybody had a freaking conniption fit, and said, oh no, you're throwing them into the jaws of the lions and the in front of the bullets of the poachers. And I had to remind them that we have researchers running around on this landscape, researching elephants, lions, whatever it might be. None of them carry weapons. We live in the bush, literally. Not this is the operation center, but when I go home to a bush camp where there's no fences or anything, and it's just a lean-to structure with a thatched roof and so on. And the hyenas beg at the fire with my dog, and the elephants to block your door so you can't get to the bathroom, whatever it might be. I don't see the need to defend yourself against wild animals with a gun if you are cautious. But the main thing is we just wanted to increase the risk on the landscape for poachers. So they do not want to be detected. So if I've got eyes and ears out there and I disrupt the landscape, I'm going to displace that problem somewhere else. So I just need to increase the risk to the poacher, make this an undesirable and unprofitable place for them to poach. They will go somewhere else, or they'll be forced to go and break other crimes somewhere to pay off the debt that they've got into. They have to rent cars and rent firearms and all sorts of other things, And if they go home empty-handed, they're either going to come back and try in full moon time when everybody can see them, or they're going to go and knock off a liquor store or something like that. And then the cops know exactly how to deal with that kind of case. But if our model was to locate, apprehend, and prosecute, we're never going to win. It's been tried and tested many times. You have such a low success rate in court. Your chance of apprehending a guy on a 3 million hectare landscape is ridiculous. And and it's so amusing for me. We have special ops here, special forces, military guys with all the night vision equipment you can possibly imagine, military grade drones, detection dogs, helicopters, you name it. We've got it all. And yet 3 guys from the local community will come in with a pair of flip-flops, an old Coke bottle filled with water, and a gun with 3 bullets in, and a shock absorber as a silencer strapped onto the front of this. And they will go in, avoid all of these fancy technologies and so on. And yes, the helicopters, and you jump out of a helicopter with a Belgian Malinois dog strapped to your chest and your FLIR night vision goggles and your automatic machine gun and whatever. And yet they get in and they get out undetected. So what is that telling you? The model is failing. You can't keep throwing money at all these technologies and more soldiers and everything just to prop up a failed model. You need to start analyzing and saying, what am I doing wrong here, man? Maybe I actually need a perimeter defense. Maybe I need to deploy a bunch of young women, specialist trained young women that run their own operation center, make them responsible for defending the boundary of this park. And they must detect every incursion coming in and out and report it immediately with the right set of information and whatever. And that's what's worked for us so far, is that early detection.
Yeah, and you're meeting the actual level of the crime and the criminal, the low-end criminal who, like you said, is sneaking in. You're meeting him on his turf. You're not coming in like you said, with a an operation like Osama bin Laden with choppers and all that. You're going right where they are at their level to stop the threat. And I loved the phrase you called it. It's the broken window. You're striving to make the area of influence the most undesirable and least profitable place to poach. Like, hey, you know what? Let's not go to that area because they're all over the place. Let's go over here. So the way you're doing it, and the way you've done it is exactly right. And you are linked with the community. You're a community partner, which goes a long way We've learned that it goes a long way when you are a friend and supporter and you work with a chief. That it, for any foundation out there who might be listening to this show, you might have a new foundation. You're like, gosh, we're struggling. We're having issues. We're not getting our message across. Work with the community. It's their country. Don't come in and tell them what to do. Come in as a friend. This is what we see. This is how we can help, and work with the leaders and the village heads. This is the way you get things done. And it's a critical piece of that puzzle, which you guys have done. So that's amazing. And I know you guys are huge in collections of snares, like staggering. Did I see like 76% drop in snaring or something crazy like that?
Yeah, our, you know, what you said now is so true. If our force multiplier, just to build on to what you were saying now, our force multiplier is the fact that we have the communities with us, you know, and the schools and what have you. So that you cannot have the one without the other. And this is what we realized. Luckily, we realized it quite a few years ago already. So we started the Bush Babies program. And some of those young mothers, you know, a lot of my Mambas have babies now. In fact, one even had a baby on patrol once, and it was an absolute shenanigans. Good Lord, I know, it was a real bush baby. So the vehicle got a puncture. You know, she felt abdominal cramps and pains, and then like we didn't have a clue what was going on. And on the way, so I called an ambulance because they said it was very bad, and the ambulance couldn't get in because the roads are very bad. So we chucked her on the back of a Land Rover, but on the way out, the Land Rover got one too many punctures. They ran out of spare wheels, and there she was, and she gave birth in the bush right there in the middle of the night with all the hyenas screaming and shouting. So, you know, that's the kind of lifestyle that these ladies are prepared to put up with. You know, now we have a whole different policy in place about, you know, women getting pregnant from the job, you know, go home.
For your help is
the risks avoided. Yeah. But yes, so the key here is not to create communities full of orphans and widows, because that's just going to destabilize the community, and you know, we're going to end up with this massive divide. It's the national park against us kind of thing. Imagine a young kid growing up and saying, well, my daddy is dead because he went into the national park. Nobody's going to say your dad was a poacher, what have you. It's going to be the Robin Hood kind of thing. I'm the sheriff of Nottingham. The Robin Hood you know, philosophy is going to get stronger and stronger in the community, where we're the bad guys. We don't want that. We don't want orphans and widows. It also puts the women under tremendous strain in the community to look after their orphan children. There's no, just like we don't have safety nets in place for somebody who uses their weapon in the line of duty. And I know in most European countries, and probably in the United States as well, if you have to defend yourself with your service weapon, you're going for counseling, man, you know, and they're going to give you teddy bears and a box of chocolates and some roses, you know, and maybe even suspend you on full pay until you've got over the trauma. Let me tell you, that does not happen here. No. If you shoot at each other, the next day you're back on the job, and, you know, you have to somehow deal with it psychologically. And I will not subject young mothers to that psychological damage that they're going to potentially carry over to their children. At the end of the day, this has got to be a multi-generational thing. And we should never, ever, ever be asking anybody, especially not a mother, to be placing the life of an animal over people. I mean, that's the rudest thing ever.
Yeah, that's not fair. It's
a terrible choice. Yeah, a terrible choice to have to make. Anyway, I can't actually remember what it is we were.
Oh no, it's okay. We're going on all tangents because we're fixing all of Africa's problems in 1 hour, so that's what we're doing. Yeah. No, I mean, and
my happy juice is helping.
Trust me, again, I wish I was there with the elephant eating the tree behind you and the hyenas. Believe me, not being able to go to Zambia this year was really not. I was not a happy camper, but I'll be there soon enough. So from 2013 to 2020. You start getting international recognition for the women in the Black Mambas unit. Again, I'm speaking with Craig Spencer, co-founder of the Black Mambas organization, the first all-female anti-poaching unit. It became world famous. I remember reading, I'm like, oh my God, this is just the greatest, because A, I'm a girl, and B, Africa needs help. I mean, I love it. And the story appeals to so many people. Of course, there's challenges like fundraising and which never end. So what I know you guys have been up for awards and you've won many awards. Where do you see this group going in 5 years? What are they going to look like? Are they going to be a blueprint that can be applied in other countries? Are you going to take it to other countries? Like, what do you do with this great concept that actually works?
Yeah, thanks, man. Our biggest achievement, I think, was the Champions of the Earth Award in 2015 that we got from the United Nations. And we didn't even recognize the significance of it. We're not in the game to win awards. So I sent some of the Mambas. I said, off you go then, go and have a jolly good time. And they ended up in New York, and I was like, wow, I missed this wonderful opportunity.
I made a mistake.
And then they're all over the news internationally, and somebody sitting overseas held up their cell phone to the TV and said, "These are your girls, man. They are on international TV answering questions to Ban Ki-moon and and various other people." And I was like, "Wow, how far has this thing gone?" All I wanted to do was, help a lot of Africa from the poaching scourge, and here they are in the international arena. But it boosted their self-esteem. So, the whole ethos that you were talking about of creating that role model in the community, so important. And we realized that all of this international acclaim and coverage that they were getting was actually helping that part of the model, so that everybody was so proud. And we even had other communities, the tribal chiefs, approaching us and saying, "Hey, where are my black mambas? How come all my neighboring villages have got black mambas? I also want black mambas in my village, please." And that was fantastic. I was like, okay, fine, I'll see if I can sell a car or something, and sell my soul at the bars in Hoedspruit. But we'll find the money, and that's how we've grown now to the 36. So we now have 3 target communities where it started with just 1, and it's insane. And yeah, so that people mustn't underestimate the value of these award ceremonies, the public profile, if I can put it mildly. But to answer your question, the plan for the Mambas, it was exactly that, to somehow kind of franchise it, from that. So we got scientists in from the living desert in California, right there in your neck of the woods. Actually, Dr. Berg and his colleagues, they came in and they researched the Mamba thing and packaged the Mamba thing. And Western Kentucky University jumped on board as well, and they sent some industrial psychologists down as well. And they drew up the microstructures and the training manuals and the whole bang shoot. So we've actually got it packaged. It's like a DIY Black Mamba kit, if you want to spread it out there.
Amazing.
And then we got a coach. Anyone was approaching us, from Bolivia to Indonesia, saying, "Oh, you've got to help us set up the thing." And I thought, that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to just achieve that conservation agencies, or the authorities, whatever you want to call it, recognize the value in integrating women into their units. But having said that, and be that all as it may, this institution is not designed for it yet. So I realized immediately, the training facilities, I can't deploy a married woman with a bunch of married guys on a patrol. If everybody said, "Why, it's all women," and so on, because socially that's taboo. You've got to sleep in the same tent together. You're out for 21 days at a time. If you on the training course does not accommodate women in the design of the toilet, just open showers. It's a typical military barracks. Open showers, open toilets, open everything. So there's no human dignity. And I'm not trying to take women and train them to be little men and then claim victory and say, "Yeah, look what I did." I am trying to empower women to take responsibility and use the skills that they've got. And that includes lipstick and earrings and looking good, on patrol, and being proud to go back home.
Yeah. If you look good,
they look
good.
Great.
Yeah, and I get it. I mean, we have female rangers and we have not had that issue. But so I know that, I think it's out of, is it Zimbabwe? Akashinga, they are armed. They are an armed female unit. Like, they are armed like SEAL training. So what happened is you took an idea and you went your direction, and somebody just took it a different way in an armed capacity. So there are armed women anti-poaching units out there, and these people work incredibly hard to get these jobs, and it's work. Africa, you don't go and make Africa your own. Africa will work you over like nobody's business. It's a hard life. Yeah, if you think you have all these great things like, I'm going to go in and do this and change that, nah, Africa has a different idea. It's got a different game plan. It basically it says, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do in Africa and how it's going to go. So that's fantastic. And the more women are put in a role of prestige and having worth and decision making is good for the entire community. So the Bush babies, which is an important part, and we firmly believe it with us, that having children learn about conservation in their most malleable years, in the early years, when you get them as children, it stays in their brain how to treat animals, how to take care of the environment and pick up litter. Once you get them on board and mentally signed up for it, then you've got a generation coming up that is more in tune with what's out there, what the crisis is, and how to get after it. So the Bush babies concept in the schools is fantastic. It's in any new foundation needs to understand you've got to do that.
Co, one of the things that one of the Mambas once said to me is the reason why they like the way we do things, because we always ask them, why don't you go and get a better job somewhere? You've got the skills, you've got so many certificates popping out your ears, the skilled rangers with all kinds of training, etc. behind you. And it's because we created a stage, we wrote a script, and we provided the props. And we said, now you guys can decide whether you want to be part of this play and whether you want to act to win an Oscar or whether you just want to be the tree in the background. It's your choice. Nobody's whipping you and forcing you and what have you. So they've, in their own organization, they've arranged themselves, some have moved on to become sergeants. This operation center I sit here with now is run completely by them. They're sitting behind computers, tracking and monitoring and manning all the walkie-talkies and the radios and so on, driving 4x4 vehicles out there amongst elephants and lions and so on. So they are actually competing for an Oscar on the script that we wrote, on the stage that has been created. The national park is a stage, etc. The Bush babies is exactly the same thing. It was a concept that was born by the Black Mambas. And we said, I know nothing about environmental education. I understand the value of it, but there's too many NGOs dragging kids through the Kruger National Park or what have you in a big bus and checking them out and then saying, look, I had 600 children this year through the park. I'm a hero now. So, but how do you actually achieve some kind of behavioral change or some kind of shift in values, towards the wildlife and wild animals and so on? How do you approach that? So, this Lee Wayne is the chief educator in the Mambas. She runs the Bush babies now. And she said, come, let me show you. We went to the classroom, and on my phone, I have an app that tells me how hot it is. Outside, it's an ambient temperature thing. Outside, it was 46 degrees Celsius, summertime, as you know how hot it gets in Africa. Inside the classroom was 56. Wow. So you could bake bread inside that classroom.
Why would you want to many?
Yeah, you could fry an egg on the window, and the how are you supposed to educate children under those conditions? There's nothing on the walls. It's just bare face brick and there's no glass in the windows, there's no ceiling fans, there's no ceiling. There's only a handful of chairs, there's only a handful of desks, and the teacher hasn't even got a chair to sit on. There's no chalk for the chalkboard or whatever it is. I mean, we haven't even got to the whiteboard level yet. It was still chalkboards. So we said, okay, first, we have to make this a pleasant place for teachers to teach. We want the teachers to go to work every day. We want them to be enthusiastic about going to work as well. So let's make it so we fix the classrooms up and we dolly it up, put fans in and tra-la-la, buy them a nice desk, etc. And then we said, how do we stimulate the kids now? How do we make it worth their while to go to school? And they get a meal a day at school, so that's a big incentive now for the parents to send their children. So you better go because I'm not feeding you, Yeah. So go get your food. And at the same time, it's a great incentive for the kids to go. And the classrooms are decorated. We're talking about primary school kids. They want to have mental stimulation, colors and, Disney patterns on the walls or whatever it is, Mowgli things and Lion King motifs and all this kind of stuff. And then the next level was to develop the lesson plans. And it's not about, the Loxodonta africana is primarily a grazer, blah, blah, blah. It's boring information. It's the influential stories and poems and programs that you see on TV There is an evaluation, of course. They write exams and they have to pass the exams, otherwise they can't move up. All of our lesson plans have been approved by the Department of Education as well, which I'm very proud of. So they fit in with mathematics and geography and biology and general science and so on. And simple things like the one and only tap in your community. It's leaking all the time. You know, let's use the mathematics class now to evaluate. There's your header tank. It's a 5,000 liter tank. It gets pumped with a truck once a week. All right. Put a 1 liter bottle under there and time it to see how long it takes to fill it up. How much water are you losing overnight? How long is your tank going to last? You know, so that's how we worked the things in. And the last stage was food security, because, and especially now during COVID-19, we're so glad, you know, it really, really paid dividends having the vegetable gardens at every school. And the kids, because some kids are not very academic, you know, they just like I was at school. They didn't want to play the fool, and you can hardly find me. I'm running around in the playground somewhere.
I'm stealing this idea right now.
Yeah, you know, so we thought we can't fail child, because I became a dedicated conservationist that's prepared to give everything I've got to conservation, and yet I was academically pretty shitty actually. So we don't want to say to a kid that's not passing our lesson plans that you're not going to achieve. So we said, you know what, you put hours in the vegetable garden and you can get the production and what have you going in the vegetable gardens at your school. So now we've got a bunch of kids that are, you know, they're going to fail, but now they're getting cool points for working in the garden. So they will pass on that alone, and they get to take veggies home, blah, blah, blah. So it's
awesome.
It's a multi-pronged matrix of things.
The thing that's a great idea, and I'm totally stealing it from you. So I'm just letting you know the vegetable gardens is a great idea. We have a few more minutes left. Craig, I wanted to ask you quickly. So, you know, I'm sure you're like me. I am up at nights like, how am I going to fund this? Like, you know, COVID has killed donations. I'm like, what have I gotten myself into? Like, was I insane at the time when I said, hey, I'm going to start a foundation in Zambia? Like, am I crazy? Like, probably, but it's a good crazy. So all foundations go through this. And where are you finding your sources of funding to be consistent? This is the problem we're having, is the consistency of things. Like, is it sponsors? Do you have like 10 sponsors that commit X dollars a year? Is it people just donating on a regular basis? Like, where is your funding coming from?
Yeah, that is, as you say, you know, these things are you know, and you can't plan ahead. You know, imagine you don't know how much money you're going to have. So you can't plan to fix vehicles and to paint schools and all that kind of thing. You just have to make it up as you go along. But we were very fortunate in that the South African government had a program, the Extended Public Works. So National Parks Board was a kind of host agent on behalf of the South African government. And we got 30% of the Mamba salary funding from the South African government. That persisted up until sort of halfway through. Yeah, it was very, very significant. And so we developed a model where that's the basic salary. Yeah, you know, the South African government has been very kind to us. They've always recognized the Mambas and the value in the young women, and have even used them at parades and things when the president of the country comes to visit the national park, and the Mambas are there doing their little parade and so very nice. And they've met Graça Machel, you know, Nelson Mandela's wife, and you know, and a lot of the ministers have come down to shake their hands and congratulate them. But sadly, you know, in the COVID crisis now, that came to an end. And so we're hoping that it will kickstart again, because we're really under a lot of pressure now to pay the salaries. And so the structure, it's a very important lesson for us all to learn as well, is the basic wage that we pay for somebody in the wildlife security arena. We know that goes home. We know that that's feeding kids and elderly and sick and whatever, you know, back at home. So the incentives that we build on top of that is, if you're a driver, then you get a driver's allowance to look after the vehicle and make sure it's all tralala. If you're a canine handler, you know, so there's all these little incentives, the first aid officers, the canine handlers, the ops room, the media liaison officers, so on and so on. So they can build their salary up. If they go for the training and they pass and they get the badge on their uniform, they can build that salary up to be quite a big earner. And that, you know, and then at the same time, if the vehicle is damaged and it's not reported, then I can punish them by taking that incentive away and say, well, now you lose your driver's bonus for that week. But I'm not touching the money that's going home to feed kids and so on. That's set in stone.
Yeah.
So I'm not influencing that part. Anyway, it's the accountabilities and the incentives and so on that we built on. And then apart from that, we've had it's a constant thing. Tusk has been very good. A lot of international NGOs have been very good to us. Tusk, Australia Zoo, Steve Irwin's zoo. Yeah, absolutely. Come down and visited the Mambas.
I'm dropping your name at all these places. I'm just letting you know, because you got power. I'm messing with you. No, these are great ideas, because I know. Yeah, I'm going to use your name wherever I can, Craig. No, I like I said, not only with this podcast am I learning how to make my foundation better, because I'm learning from people who've already done it, who are achieving things. And I love sharing any victories we have that we can share with other people. So you giving us ideas and other people with foundations, these are great ideas.
Yeah. One of the angles that we adopted was in the past, about 35 to 40 years ago, there was a lot of culling happening on the landscape here. Elephants were culled, as you know. And those baby elephants were shipped off to zoos in Europe and all over the world. And we approached a number of the zoos and said, hey, come on, you've got elephants from our national park now, that you're showing off to your people, the visitors. Those elephants need to fulfill an ambassadorial role. And Aalborg Zoo, Kansas City Zoo in the United States has been a huge supporter of ours and still is to this very day. And in Germany as well, we've got a German organization, Rettet das Nashorn. Gut, ja, schnell. And that's Rolf and Perdita. They're great friends of ours. They're great friends of ours as well. So we have a whole suite of funders, and then we offer them the opportunity to, you say, we've got a number of teams. So the Mambas work in a team of 5. And we say, if you would like to adopt that 5, they look after 10,000 hectares at a time. They have their vehicles and their canines and la. Here's the budget. What can you do? Can you do the vehicle costs? Can you do the canine costs, the uniforms per annum or whatever? And some, Kansas City Zoo have been really great. They just said, well, just give us that unit and we'll sort them out. And Terry Irwin at Australia Zoo said the same thing. Boom. Aalborg Zoo in Denmark said, staff rations. We will make sure that they always have rations, food rations, when they go on patrols. Boom. So, awesome. Those are the kind of partners that we're looking for.
That's awesome.
We don't want money moving through our account unnecessarily. We would rather the provider. So if we need tires for the cars, we'll say to somebody, Dunlop in town, we need 4 tires for 4, whatever.
That's really helpful. I mean, that's a really great idea. I hadn't thought about approaching those organizations and those departments. So that's really great. Well, Craig, I could talk to you for hours and hours. You were an absolute pleasure. You are everything and more that Tom Snitch said you were. You're fun. You're engaged. I'm proud of what you've achieved. I'm proud of what you've done for advancing women in South Africa and wherever you go. And because of that, it's just going to spread across the world. Other people are going to see what you're doing and want to change the world and say, you know what, you're right. We have this great untapped resource called women who can do anything and more, because we so many women aren't given any credence, and they have a point to make, and so they're going to work harder than anybody out there to prove that they were worthy to be part of a solution. So, Craig, I hope you come visit us in Zambia sometime. I'm going to be out there next summer, so come on out to the Nsefu sector. We'd love to have you at Zakomo Safari with us and hang out, and you can see our team out there and, just talk conservation, which we could do all day.
That'd be great. Thanks very much, Kay. And
Absolutely.
Now my little secret is that I have a bit of Jack Daniels mixed with water in this bottle, so that's why I was able to still the nerves.
It's your go-go juice.
It's my happy juice. Yes.
Again, Craig Spencer, co-founder of the Black Mambas. If you want to support and learn more about this amazing organization, go to www.blackmambas. That's MAMBAS.org. They're an amazing group of women with amazing leaders. Much love, Craig, from San Diego to South Africa. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll have you on in the near future. See what's going on with you.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Co. Really appreciate the opportunity to chat.
Thanks, Craig. See you soon. Bye.